Hey there, how's it going?
Hey man, I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for making time.
Man, thank you, man. This has been great. Like I've been getting multiple people. I'm enjoying this.
Oh,
Just
nice,
to talk,
nice.
yeah, just to talk about, struggles, mental health, all that stuff. Like it's been a good one. So it's been a journey. Difficult, uncomfortable, talk about things like that, but we got to talk about it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, got to talk about it. So Um, yeah, I've already started recording, so we can go ahead and knock this baby on out.
All right.
So, firstly, I've noticed when you sent me the email that you had a website called Project 55. And I got to looking at it, and it amazed me on how you seen the issues that occurs when it comes to mental health. So, what made you decide to start Project 55? And what was the changes, or what was it that you saw that you realized changes had to be made?
For me, with Project 55, it actually started many years before.
Mhm.
I had been struggling with mental health in my high school years, in my college years. I had actually developed a substance abuse problem tied to really a painkiller addiction that started in high school, trying to medicate for a spinal condition. And that combined with some mental health struggles I had was not a great recipe when I was in college. And ultimately, it got so bad that I had made the decision that I didn't want to be around anymore. And so
Oh
I was
yeah.
about 35 pills into an attempt to take my own life.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I had a couple fraternity brothers actually step in the room, find out what was going on, and ultimately stage an intervention. They were able
Mhm.
to stage this intervention because one of them had a brother with a substance abuse problem, and they had already done an intervention for his brother a year ago, and
Oh
he
wow.
had a basic amount of training to say, this is how you approach somebody in this struggle. And that amount of training and that sincerity and that boldness that they had to step into my life and tell me the things I didn't want to hear at that moment were really what saved my life. I went home, got clean, and over the years, as I worked on both my mental health and physical health,
Mhm.
and through business, I would find myself speaking at conferences, and I'd be speaking at a conference on the topic of mental health and the struggles everyone has, and most people would fit into one of two camps. I would have some that would come up to me at the end of my presentations saying, "I've been struggling so much, I'm either." Suicidal, I'm got
Mhm.
severe depression, severe anxiety, you name it, or I'm in the camp of I want to help, but I'm not equipped, and I always am afraid of saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I also happen to be in the business of education. So I had an insurance agency. I sold that, but I also have trained people for a living for many years. And so I had a number of people say, you know, these mental health experts and you know the education space. Why are we not putting something together to put something together that's practical for the everyday person that has some challenges? And how do we step in that way? And so for me, it was the cacophony of voices that said, Justin, you got to do something. You're the one who's equipped to do it. Can
Mhm.
we build something out? And so that's where this Project 55 and mental health first responder training program came from. The fact that I heard so many therapists say, well, yeah, well, we can give you the skill sets required to intervene when people are struggling, that can triage the situation, get them the resources, and get them the help they need, while still not being so exhaustive of a training program that you'd have to become a mental health professional to be effective at it. So that's really where it came from. That 55% of people in our country who are struggling with mental health but aren't getting the resources they need, that's what we're designed to attack. And the whole goal is to give it away for free so that we don't have finances as a barrier for people going in and providing help or receiving help.
Dude, that is incredible. That's how you really answer the biggest problem in mental health. Like people are struggling, especially financially when it comes down to trying to invest in their own health. And for you to actually step in and offer that, it's like it's big. That's big, and I really commend you for that. That's incredible. That's
Thank
why I was like, yeah, I have to, yeah, we have to talk this one out because that's very important, very important. I wanted to pull three things from that email that you mentioned to me. The one that you mentioned was people not getting treatment, long wait times, an overwhelmed system. Now, with that, where is the system failing people right now when we talk about that?
I think the system breaks down several points.
Mm-hmm.
Point one is we don't have enough mental health professionals to meet the needs of the Americans that are here.
Mm-hmm.
We simply have had too big of a crisis, and that crisis exploded even further with COVID, with lockdowns, with isolations, and so it grew
Yeah.
exponentially. And as people were isolated, they had worse outcomes for their own health. So from that standpoint, we weren't incentivizing enough people to become part of this profession. But the other part is so many of those professionals also got burnt out by the overload that we lost a bunch of them because we didn't give those professionals the resources they needed for the heavy burden that was placed on them. Past
Yeah.
that, if you're trying to get mental health support, it breaks down. If you have to wait 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks to be able to get into a mental health professional, not even saying a good one, but just a person that will accept your insurance, that's oftentimes too late, and you've incurred too many subsequent problems prior to getting any level of help. And so we have a healthcare system that doesn't incentivize mental health professionals. In fact, it's been so difficult for these mental health professionals to get paid by these insurance companies that a lot of them said, we're going to stop taking insurance. So, what that means is the people who need this resource the most, if you do not have financial resources, you are going with the least qualified person. And it's nothing against them, but they're likely newest to the industry with the
Mm-hmm.
most recent experience. Um, of just becoming a professional, so they don't have that same level of expertise. And you're
Right.
also, if you have a specialist trauma, so for example, if you have been an abuse victim, if you have lost a child, there are trained therapists that have specific practices dedicated towards your specific struggle. And if you're
Sure.
someone who's relying upon insurance for that mental health care, you will not get a specialist. You will get a generalist who likely doesn't have all of the training necessary to meet your specific needs in that focused environment. And so those are just a couple of ways where the system as it's been set up and the circumstances have failed us in the US.
Definitely agree. Definitely agree. With all the hard work that you have really put into this, and with you in this predicament, what does it actually mean to you to be a mental health first responder, so to speak?
I just think it means somebody who cares enough to intervene when somebody else is struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to have tremendous amounts of education. Oftentimes, most people are afraid of saying the wrong thing. And
Sure.
oftentimes, the most wrong thing you can say is just by saying nothing. I have found so many circumstances where you can be inarticulate, say the wrong thing, but you're the person who did that and followed up with the individual. And to that person, it made all the difference. It didn't matter the words, it was that you actually showed up. And the bonus is we can equip you to do it the right way and be even more effective and be that lifeline while somebody is waiting for that professional support.
Man, that's great. That's really, really great. So I think you touched up on it just a few minutes ago, but I want you to kind of elaborate on this when we're talking about this. So you mentioned like intervention and things like that. So let's just break this down. If someone, noticed a friend or a coworker, struggling in that way, what should they actually do in that moment? What should they do?
So,
Like first come to head.
so it depends on circumstances, but the first thing is you're going to engage. So we have this framework called eager. The first step in that is the engage. It's you're going to find a time and place where it's appropriate to approach that person who's struggling and just check in and say, "Hey, I noticed things look a little bit different lately. I see you're a little off. Are things going okay? Do you want to talk about it for a few minutes? Do we want to carve out some time? Do you want to go for a walk?" Finding an opportunity time to just simply engage in the conversation. That's step one. Now you have to respect the boundaries they put up,
Absolutely.
but if they invite you into that, then it's the next step is you're going to listen. And it, you know that we have this eager framework. The second step is active listening, which is different than just I'm hearing you. It's the actual process of trying to extract their story from them, what meaning they're assigning to that story, and helping them along to a destination. And that destination could be to get additional help. It could be to do something positive like work out. It could be to take a look at what they're saying yes to and learn to say no. It could be any number of those different things. But it starts with let's actively listen to find out what's really going on, what that real challenge is. And then once we know what that real challenge is, we can then pivot to giving support. And giving support isn't just something that's financial. And it's not necessarily always referring to resources, but it most definitely can be pointing in the direction of appropriate therapists, or if it's a physical issue, doctors, etc. You're understanding what those needs are. But also support can look like speaking hope to them in a difficult situation and speaking to the strengths that you've seen that they've had in their lives and how they've applied those to other difficult situations. And then talking about realistic outcomes. So you can give support in a number of different ways. Then after that, it's like, okay, what do I do? I've given them support. I've said, hey, I believe you can get through this. But then it's what do we do? How do we empower them? There's a thing we teach called the solve framework, and it's
Mhm.
how any person can learn to solve their own problems. This younger generation, Gen Z in particular, is treated problem solving by going to Google, by going to ChatGPT, you name the online language model, versus learning to solve a problem themselves. So part of what you can do is teach them a framework for how to
Mhm.
triage and solve their own challenges. And that
True.
challenge could be, I'm struggling with mental health. What is my first next step? So there's that part of the process. And then the last
Mhm.
part is really the looking at referring to professionals. There comes a time and a place where this is outside of our skill set.
Mhm.
We are first responders. We are not the psychologists. We are not the therapists.
Yep.
So our goal is to support them, empower them, and help them, but then direct them when appropriate to the right resources, be it therapists, be it psychologists, be it psychiatrists, and being able to say, here are these resources, and then making sure we pass that baton successfully. And then by that I mean, hey, you've here's the contacts for these specialists, or if it's within your company and you have an employee assistant program, okay, here's these resources, and then following up to make sure that they took that appointment, that they went there, that they did that, and how it was for them. And so if we can do those things, we've accomplished 90% of what therapists would love everybody in everyday society to do to step in when people are struggling.
Now, people do get stubborn, right? And there'll be certain people that that actually when you try to intervene, and they'll actually go into like, okay, let's hold it in. I don't want to talk about it. And we are like, never bring it up. And they'll never talk about it again. They'll never do anything of the sort. And that's where concernment starts to come in. What happens there that we could be more supportive to people that don't want to talk about it? You understand what I mean, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it comes back to we have to be more intentional about relationships. So it's much more difficult if I don't have a trusting relationship with you
Mm-hmm.
to that level where I can speak into your life and you can speak into mine. And so if we haven't been intentional and foster that relationship, it's very difficult to overcome something like that.
Yeah.
Versus where somebody that you've given them permission and you've had permission to have a relationship where we're honest with each other to speak into that and say, hey, I see you're shutting down right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I care about you and I care about the outcome for your family. And when I've seen this play out before, the whole shutting down thing, the outcomes aren't wonderful. And so it's that redirect of what's holding you back that, you're thinking that this is best to shoulder this load alone. And is there anything we can talk about to talk about maybe even ways that feel safe enough for you to open up about that we can start to have this dialogue? And it doesn't have to be me. And I
Right.
think that's the other point too. You're
Mm.
not always going to be that person for someone else. And you can always say, if not me, then somebody, and helping them identify who that safe person is in their life is to open up to. And so
Right.
if it's not you, and it happens to be their friend Jimmy, who every week they've been in a softball league together, then it's like, hey, look, as your friend, I'm going to challenge you. Why don't we just text Jimmy? Why don't you set a time, get together with Jimmy, because he sounds like a great friend and someone you could rely on, and I think he'd be of great help. And do you think he'd be open to listening to you and being that safe space for you? And obviously they're going to say, well, probably, yeah, but he's probably got a lot going on. Say, well, I think that's for him to decide. But if Jimmy was in need, if Jimmy was struggling, and he was going to ask you for help, but he didn't because he was afraid that he might overburden you. You probably
Right.
would say, what are you talking about? And so it's part of this is just having that conversation and understanding if you're not that safe person, helping them identify who that person is, and then gently pushing them towards a decision that I can reach out and have that conversation. And then the best thing you can do there is the next week follow up and say, hey, did you ever end up reaching out with Jimmy? And if they had reached out to Jimmy, oh, did you guys connect? How was that for you? And being that game of follow up, because most people fail with the follow up. You could do
Yes.
everything wrong and still follow up and be more effective than doing everything right and not follow up.
Hmm. I agree. I agree. So when we talk about that, what do you believe are the biggest mistakes that people make when they're trying to help someone?
Number one, I think we're trying to solve the problem which would work best for us
Yeah.
versus
Yep.
actually
Hmm.
listening, right? What works for me is going to
Yep.
be different than you, right?
Hmm.
So that's a challenge. And then
Right.
the other part is assuming that we have to be the person to solve the problem. And what oftentimes happens, especially, husbands and wives, the wife will say, you're trying to solve my problem versus listen to me, right? What
Hmm.
somebody in crisis needs is for somebody to sit with them, to be
Hmm.
in that moment with them, to share that space. If I'm in a ditch, you shouting down, oh, it feels so bad down there. That doesn't help me. But you climbing down in the ditch and willing to sit with me for a while, that does. And so it's those type of things where it's sitting with them, not trying to solve the problem,
Hmm.
and empowering them to take that action. Because again, especially with men, if men have some other man come in and tell them what to do, that's emasculating in a lot of different ways.
Yep.
Versus if I can lead a man to come to his own decision and he takes charge, now he's empowered, now he has agency in his own life to take that next step. And so if we can throw away our superhero cape and put on the I'm just going to be that friend who's in the foxhole with you, and I'll coach you towards you making this empowering decision. It's a
Hmm.
much better outcome.
Since you talked about the men portion, this is just in your opinion. This is not anything in the fact or nothing like that. I just want your opinion. If you do have facts, you can always speak on it too. But do you believe between men and women that men is more harder to open up to versus women?
I got asked this the other day. I was being interviewed, and it's funny you mentioned that. Yes and no. So
Okay.
in corporate America,
Hmm.
women leaders find it very difficult to open up themselves because a lot of them have had to overcome these hurdles and become super strong and direct in certain ways in order to climb that corporate ladder.
Yeah.
And what happens oftentimes, and they'll say this is not me saying this, but the actual women saying that the other women, when they spot that vulnerability in them, will attack. And so they don't feel the safety there. Now, Outside of that, I would say, outside of leadership roles, women have, I would say, historically an easier time. The men, the challenge with the men is a couple fold. Number one, especially amongst whether men are married or divorced, what we find is they don't have that friend network that they once had. And for a lot of married guys out there, their social calendar is dependent upon what their wife sets up for the weekend and what couple, etc. And their friend becomes the wife's husband, friend, that type
Yeah.
of situation. And so they don't have that deep level of trust. They have their old boys they
Mhm.
used to talk to, but guess
Yeah.
what? If I haven't talked to Phil more than a couple times a year, and when we're
Mhm.
getting together, we're just talking about like the fun stuff because that's what just makes it great to be together. It's too hard for us to bring everything that transpired in the past 6 months up and have that deep conversation. And so, for a lot of reasons, men not having that regular outlet where they can open up in that same place is a big hurdle for them to have to overcome. Whereas you see a lot of women are more in community, are better at developing those relationships, and because they're more emotionally in tune by their general nature, they tend to have these discussions that we tend to hold off unless we're talking to some guy that we are really super close with and very secure in that relationship
Absolutely.
with.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's let's talk about workplace since you had mentioned it. So, why is mental health becoming such a big issue in workplaces?
Well, I think in the US it's over a couple $100 billion a year in lost productivity from absenteeism and presenteeism caused by depression. So it's a huge financial cost when people are either skipping work because of mental health issues,
Hmm.
present at work, but they're distracted, they're on their phone, they're searching the web, and they're just trying to cope day to day. So there's
Right.
that impact. But also post-COVID and through COVID, what happened was so many people went remote. So we took people who were in community and removed them from community. Now we have isolated people, and so many people rebuilt their lives based on this hybrid work environment or fully remote work environment. And now, where these people used to have that connection and relationships where they spend all this time together, they're isolated behind a desk, behind a computer screen, and you just cannot form the same level of relationships virtually as you can in person.
And you talk about COVID and the workplace. It's funny how there are some people that actually do like enjoy the isolation sitting behind the desk and stuff like that. And then you got the ones that actually don't like it. They miss it or whatever. And it's like, I can't deal with this. Like, I can't deal with it. So, what would be the difference between people that enjoy doing it and having isolation? Well, for me, I think it's actually temporary. But what would be the difference between that and people that do enjoy it, that don't enjoy it? I'm sorry.
Well, I think whether you may enjoy, so I'm highly introverted, but
Me too.
you still need human contact. So
Yes.
the studies have shown that you need 7 physical touches a day just to maintain normal human health. If
Yeah.
you have any less than that, your physiology is suffering. And they've done tons of studies on this. So even though I say, hey, I'm good in the corner, etc., if I don't get those physical touches, whether it's a tap on the shoulder, etc., then I'm doing worse off, even though I'm naturally introverted. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
extroverted is even more impacted
Yeah.
because they want that constant communication. They thrive on it. That's what makes them feel whole. So regardless of whether you're an introvert or extrovert, you still need that outside connection point, and it doesn't have to be from workplace, but it
Mm-hmm.
has to be outside of just a pet. You need human contact in your life. And so it's just a matter of degree of how much you need. And what I can say the problem is you have introverts that still desire human connection, but they prefer one-on-one connection. And the
Mm-hmm.
problem is so many introverts that went home in COVID, they thought, oh, this is nice at first. But then they lost connections and they lost the ability to have that one-on-one connection. And so for them to find new connections and build new relationships became that much more difficult given their introverted nature because the introverts actually developed most of their friendships at work because it was the easiest place to do it versus having to join some club, etc. And so it's just a challenge across the board, whether you're introverted or extroverted.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. Let's briefly talk about you for a second.
Mhm.
Are you married and do you have any kids?
Married for 23 years, and I got a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 16-year-old.
Sweet. So this leads in right into my next thought. So, as a dad, how does this apply to families and parenting in the mental health?
Across the board, our kids, by and large, if you were part of that COVID group, are struggling worse than the adults are. And they missed out on a lot of life growth that they could have had if
Mhm.
everything wasn't shut down. And so I have a lot of this Gen Z will say to me, I don't know how to start a conversation with individuals that are struggling because I don't know how to start a conversation with somebody I've never met before, even under
Mhm.
just basic circumstances. When you compound that with the social media and all the time they spend on there and the comparison and the judgment and the short attention spans and what's happening, and they're saying, well, what jobs are going to be available for us? There's a lot of anxiety for this younger generation as
Oh
well.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, as parents, we have to be even more tuned into who our kids are hanging out with. If they're not with individuals and they're not with groups and they're just isolated by themselves, those
Mhm.
warning bells should go off. If
Yep.
if we're not checking their computers and seeing what they're typing into the language models like ChatGPT
Right.
and seeing what conversations they're having, we're missing out on key information there.
Mhm.
And so as parents, we just have to be a lot more informed as to what's going on with our kids and finding ways to ensure that despite all the technology, they are engaging with human beings because it's going to be critical for their success. But we also have to recognize that the challenges they're facing are different than what we faced. And they have real uncertainty, and saying to them, well, if you just work hard enough, that will be okay, and life will work out. Well, life doesn't work out for everybody. And so we have to be truthful with them, otherwise they'll disconnect. And so we need as parents to develop this rapport with our kids where there's that trust, where when we tell them things about life, that they trust that they're true, that we're not giving them some platitude that used to be true for a previous generation, but we
Mhm.
also speak hope. And then we give them a little swift kick to get out the door to meet friends and build relationships.
Absolutely. I told yes. Yes. This is bringing like literally softness into the soul. It's like it's therapeutic to listen to because this is absolutely true that you're saying. Now, I have a 5-year old daughter. All right. And she was literally born right in the smack dab of COVID. I want to say it was January 2021, right? So she's practically has missed out on what happened in COVID and all of the other things of, you know, not being isolated and stuff like that. So she pretty much lucked out. Well, not lucked out, but she, luckily passed that sentiment and she can actually just go out there now and be more sociable, still cautious, but still sociable and, being, you know, friends with people and stuff like that. So, what advice would you give me as a dad? Because she's going to get to a stage where she's going to, be suffering. She's going to, you know, she's going to stay close to not having conversations with me. What advice would you give me starting out since she's young when that time comes for her that she's not wanting to open up or anything like that?
I think the biggest thing that daughters want from their fathers is that unconditional love. That
Yes.
knowing that there's no act that a daughter can do that a father would abandon her over. That, as I've said to my daughter, if you killed a guy, I'm figuring out where to bury the body. That's my job. Like, not to, we will figure out everything else later, but my role is to protect you.
Yes.
So whatever you say to me is between you and me. And it's through the
Hmm.
lens of I care about you. There's not a thing you can do that's going to change the love I have for you. So
Hmm.
if we've got that locked in, and then we have the requisite time together, both having fun and telling stories and experiencing life. And by experiencing life, it's the simple things of a young child, even at age 5 or age 7 or age 8, when you go to an airport and you have to put that self tag luggage tag in, they can help with the touch screen. All of a sudden, you're
Yeah.
building agency and skill sets for them that they're learning, oh, I can do this too. Anything that your child could do for themselves, as soon as they learn to do it for themselves, you're to make them do it for themselves going forward. Otherwise, you're stealing the power they could have. We
True.
want to continue to compound skill sets over time. So the second kid learns to walk, we don't push them around in a stroller anymore. We say you can walk. The second a kid learns to ride the bike, we don't sit them on a seat in our bike and pedal for them. They ride in a separate bike from us. And the same thing
Hmm.
is my daughter, when she was young, if she wanted to call and see if this dress was still on sale, I gave her the number. She called the number and she'd call the Gap and say, hey, is this still on sale? They'd hear the little kid's voice. They'd think it was sweet. They'd play along. But she learned she can go and talk to people. And so those are the type of things that are empowering and just equipping those younger kids with that ability of I'm safe and secure no matter what. And by the way, as soon as I have agency and the capability of doing something on my own, that is now my responsibility. It is no longer my parents' responsibility for me.
Now you said unconditional love. Now, when my daughter was an infant and growing up to be that child, it's normal, but she didn't want to be around. Right. She didn't want nothing to do. She wanted to be with her mom and stuff like that. Now, as she's gotten older, as she's gotten 3, 4 years old, and she started going to school, that's when everything changed. That's where she'll be happy to see me. She embraces me. She hugs me. She'll, Daddy, Daddy, run to me, hug me, and stuff like that. And, I'll walk her, to the car, take her home, and we'll have little conversations. So I don't get this a lot, and it's something I really need to hear, but how am I doing in that base? Am I going in the right direction when I do things like that?
Yeah, the more you can embrace your daughter and be excited about what she's excited about. I mean, I can tell you this. I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a fan of fishing.
Yeah.
My oldest son's favorite thing on the planet to do is fish.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta do what my kid loves to do. And whether it's your daughter and she wants to play with dolls, you play with the dolls, right? You enter their world. If
Yeah.
you're willing to enter their world, you build that trust with them and that relationship with them. Because if you don't, then somebody else will, whether it's just the mom, whether it's another adult, whether it's a teacher. And what you don't want is other people having more influence because they simply entered the space that just wasn't your favorite place to play. I mean, I'm not a big doll person, but
Yeah.
like that's what my daughter does, so I will love playing dolls with her. And so as long as you do those things and you keep leaning into where your daughter's is having interest, then you're doing it right. The other good news is we once met with a marriage and family therapist, and we are talking about parenting with our kids. And my wife was super concerned about, hey, how do we get this right, do it right? And she said, look, if you get a 60% as a parent, you will develop a normally functioning adult someday. So
Mhm.
if you get 60% of it right, you really have to screw up as a parent to make a messed up adult. So take some of the
Right.
pressure off that you're going to blow it anyway, even despite your best of intentions. So as long as your heart's in the right place and you put the time in with your kids and they spell love Time, if you do that and you're enthusiastic about what they love, then you're winning. It's a winning formula.
all I need to hear right there. So yeah, that's a lot of things to, get through. But yes, I'm definitely working on that. But let's talk about more of you. Let's get into you. What do you do like besides Project 55 when you're off time? Like when you spending time with family, what do you do?
So when I'm not doing Project 55, I've got my day job. I run an education company. So I'm either building coursework and working with organizations or speaking at conferences. Outside of that, I'm pretty much a homebody. It's either with my wife, my kids, or occasionally getting out on the golf course and having fun out there, but pretty simple.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to get into, a long paragraph story.
Yeah.
I already knew. Like I'm an introvert. I understand it. So I'm
Yeah.
not even gonna, push that even more. But yes, that is awesome. Like because I know me being an introvert, like I don't like to talk much, like outside. Like when I'm at work or whatever, yeah, I have little small conversations, but I'm usually there, get it in, come on out, and come
Hmm.
home. And then I usually work on this or, I'll work on something else. And that is good for me. You know what I mean? That's good for me. That is something that I love to do. A lot of people will give me some crap and be like, man, you need to, kind of get out more and stuff like that. I'm like, well, coming here to work is good enough. Going to the grocery store is good enough. You know,
Hmm.
a lot of these things are good for me. So I can't sit here and complain about where I am in my life. I think I'm pretty much happy where I'm at. So I can't even complain about that. So so I got maybe a couple more questions and then we can go and get on out of here. Uh, for an advice, what's one thing someone listening to like right now in this podcast that could be more, prepared in mental health aspect? You understand what I mean?
Yeah. So if we're talking about helping others,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
simplest thing. Every conference I go to, I always start the same way. The simplest and easiest way, even if you were never to go through any additional training to be effective,
Mm-hmm.
is to open up your phone in your contacts, put in crisis hotline, the number 988. The big misconception out there is that it's a suicide hotline. It's a suicide and crisis hotline. And the number of times where all you have to do is if someone is truly in crisis and you don't feel equipped, is you pull out your phone, you hit the number that's been saved in there, and the mental health professional for free is there. You could just hand the phone over and you have done more for that person than you can possibly imagine. It's a very simple way to step in for others. Now, if we're talking about our own selves,
Mm-hmm.
it's the simple stuff, right? We know based on all the research that if you walk 30 minutes a day, it has a 25 to 30% reduction of depressive symptoms. So it's the easiest thing and it's free. So when you say, I can't do anything, I don't have any money, there's no way I can impact my mental health, there's a way, right? If you're struggling with anxiety, well, the funny thing about the brain is gratitude and anxiety don't work at the same time in the brain. So if you're spiraling over something, simple solution is you just start writing out everything on the planet you're grateful for. What will happen is it short circuits that anxiety wire that's keeping you spiraling, and then all of a sudden your body can reset and get to homeostasis. And that can even be, I'm glad there's air. So simple things like that that don't cost any money. And so it's like it's not just, hey, we need a mental health professional. There is stuff we can do in our own life that is very inexpensive or darn near free
Yeah.
and move the needle for our own health. And we have a responsibility to tackle that first while we're waiting for outside support. Or in some cases, we might not even need that outside support simply by following some best practices.
Bad. I agree to that too. If someone feels unprepared to help someone in a crisis, this is me too, because I struggle with this too. What would you tell them?
That saying nothing is worse than saying the wrong thing. And in most cases, The biggest lie someone with suicidal ideation is telling themselves is no one's going to care. The world is not going to miss my existence on this plane. And so the fact that you lean in, despite feeling ill prepared, you eliminate the number one lie that people with suicidal ideation struggle with is that the world will not miss me. I will not be an impact of change, etc. And so even if you said the wrong thing, you've now eliminated that lie that's at the top of the list when they have their checkbox of, I don't want to be on this planet anymore. All you have to do is that knowing I just leaned in. So even though you're scared, the wrong thing is still better than nothing in most cases.
Right. I feel that. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I have to keep that in mind. Like sometimes I like to like not really force like the issue, but kind of like keep checking in. Just keep checking in, and sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. So yeah, that's something.
But there's important, you just said keep checking in. Again, for most people never do the first follow up. Someone
Right.
that checks in second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, that has a huge impact. The amount of people who have reached out to me and said, I can't believe you just kept following up with me and kept remembering me. And now, personally, what I did is I just set calendar invite reminders to myself that were set for every week. And
Yeah.
I just kept doing that. And like I just had it so I didn't have to think. It was boom, here comes my text or here comes my phone call. So those are the type of things that make a huge difference just by following up. Even if the person doesn't open up, you do some therapeutic benefit by being that follow-up person.
Justin Goodman, you were great, man. You was great. I think we could actually learn a lot from you. And this is showing right here. Project 55, all that good stuff. Yeah, any social medias, any hookups that you got that you want to just throw out there?
The best place to find us is just actually on our website, project55.org. That's where you get access to the free mental health training, and we're never going to spam you, no ads. It's just first name, last name, email address. You've got that. And that also comes with our entire resource library so that you can send those resources to friends in need, etc. And again, project55.org, and it's free to everyone and anyone.
Fair enough for me, man. Justin Goodman, y'all. I appreciate you, man. You were
Thanks
great.
so much for having me.
Thank you, man.